Hey, what's up, everybody? John Richmond. You just finished another awesome episode of Angles. As always, brought to you by my law firm, Richmond Bona Personal Injury Attorneys. Just sat down with Laura Fitzgerald. She is a cemetery historian and enthusiast. She told some really wild stories about cemeteries, things that you probably never knew, things maybe you've wondered about, maybe things you never even thought about before. We talked about Forest Lawn. We talked about a lot of other cemeteries, including Oakwood, where she currently is at. And look, really, really fascinating story, not just about cemeteries, but about the people that we have buried in cemeteries here in Western New York, from people going over the falls to former presidents. Really, really cool stories and some cool tales. So check it out. It's a different type of episode, but I think you'll find it really interesting, especially for all of those of you who are as curious as I am. Enjoy. You guys all good back there? We're waiting for you. You're good to go? I'm just kidding. What's up? Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
You want to talk about cemeteries?
Yes, I love talking about cemeteries. My favorite topic. Yes.
Where should we start? Like, where do you think is the best place to start? Like, I almost want to ask you, like, what is a cemetery?
I think basically my love of cemeteries kind of grew out of my love of history. As a kid, I used to go down to Chautauqua Lake a lot to see my grandparents, and there was this beautiful little cemetery there. And I used to meander around there with my two cousins. My one cousin used to, she swore she could smell dead people, so she would plug her nose every time we went. But ironically, a few years ago, I spoke to her, and now she's into them too. So that's a pretty good thing. But I don't know. I just think, you want to know the history of a town, go to the local cemetery. It's where you're going to learn everything. That's where all the founders are, and you'll hear incredibly interesting stories and see all kinds of art. And it's fun.
The one thing I always think about, I go past cemeteries, and I'm sure we'll talk about Forest Lawn because you spent a long time there, is there is just so much history there, and it's almost like I don't know where to begin. Like, I don't know how to navigate a cemetery, so I'm kind of curious. I know you led tours on Forest Lawn, and maybe actually, why don't we start out this way? Give us a little bit of background, of your your history working at cemeteries, where you are now, and then we can kind of jump into talking about how to navigate your way through them and how you can learn from them.
Yeah, I was taking a class in art history at Buff State back in the late 90s, early 2000s, and Dr. Kowski mentioned something called the rural cemetery movement, and it really struck a chord with me for some reason because they incorporate art, history, and nature together, which are three things that I love. Mm-hmm. So then he said, "Oh, Forest Lawn down the street." So then I went down to Forest Lawn, and then I took a trolley tour, and that was it. It was over. Then I signed up. Where can I sign up to learn more? Where can I be a docent? So then for 20 years, I was a docent at Forest Lawn. And then there was going to be an opening soon. So I approached the then president and said, I really love this place. Here's what we can do. And he really loved my ideas, and he hired me. So I did that for 3 years. Really loved it there. And now I'm at a similar site. Well, it's a very small site. It's about the 10th of the size up in Niagara Falls, so called Oakwood Cemetery.
Yeah.
And that's where all the daredevils are, like Annie Edson Taylor, who went over the falls in a barrel. Yeah. It'll be the 125th anniversary this year.
That's crazy.
Her stunt. Yeah, it is crazy. She's 63 years old, deciding to do that for.
I think you have the Oppenheimers up there, and you have don't you have some pretty?
We have a Shokoffs. Yeah. Mostly daredevils. I mean, there's some people, people involved with a lot of people involved with the Underground Railroad up there. The owner of the Cataract House and all those people are up there.
So what was it about maybe that first trolley ride through Forest Lawn that you, like you said, just hooked you?
I guess it was just because it was so beautiful, and it incorporated so many different things. Like, you could look at the beautiful trees or the flowers or the water, but then there are the monuments, and then they always, pique curiosity for me, because a lot of times you can learn a lot about someone who's buried based on their stone.
Is it, I was funny because I moved here. I grew up in Rochester, moved here from moved here from New York City in 2015. And maybe I was just younger and not paying attention, but when I got here and people were like, yeah, a lot of people just go to Forest Lawn, they walk through it as part of their day. Is that normal?
It is normal, because actually prior to what's called the rural cemetery movement, and Forest Lawn is an example of it. That was founded in the 1830s. Before that, there were no public parks in the United States. The first public park was Central Park in New York, which didn't come out until after the Civil War.
Yeah.
So that's where people went to relax and recoup after a long week. Because you think during the Industrial Revolution, people are working 13-hour days, 6 days a week. They only have 1 day off a week.
Yeah.
And they want to be outside and they want to be in the sunshine and the fresh air. So they would go to the park, or they would go to the cemeteries, and they would have picnics and visit their loved ones. And that's kind of how it grew from there. And then actually the parks movement in the United States was a direct reflection of this rural cemeteries.
So rural cemeteries, or I guess cemeteries in general, are like the OG parks.
100%.
Wow, I did not know that. But even today, right? I mean, like people still do this at Forest Lawn, and you don't see that at a lot of other places.
No, you don't. No, and I can't tell you how many times I hear people say, "Oh, that's my favorite place to run because of all the hills and stuff." But yeah.
So when you got to Forest Lawn, because you said you were a docent there for about 20 years before you started working, what were maybe some of the things that surprised or shocked you the most when you first started working there? Things that you're like, man, I never would have imagined this to be true.
Well, a lot of just the stories in general. Like I didn't know about, the Buffalo invented the grain elevator, and the guy who did that, Joseph Dart, is in Forest Lawn. And the guy who invented the electric chair was a dentist in Buffalo, and he was involved in inventing the electric chair.
A dentist invented the electric chair?
A dentist invented the electric chair.
I wonder why.
Well, he was part of this commission in New York State for the ethical, termination of pets and stuff.
Oh, wow.
So he was in a bar one night with the head of the SPCA, and they were talking about an article that they recently read in the newspaper about this, a guy who worked on the grain elevators. He was drunk, and he went over to the electric generator, and people used to visit the electric generators all the time, and there was a metal railing preventing people from getting too close. But what they would do is they would stand on parts of each side of the railing, and they would touch fingers, and sparks would go between their fingers.
Oh, wow.
So he went up to the railing, and it just being himself, he touched the railing and nothing happened. So then he touched the generator, and it killed him instantly.
Yeah.
And according to the coroner, it didn't cause him a lot of pain. So then they thought, well, maybe we can use this to more humanely way to kill animals. And then he was also part of this commission because they were also having problems with public executions of human beings. And a lot of times when people would be hung, if their neck didn't break, they would just be there. They wouldn't die right away. It was a really painful, slow way to die. So they thought, oh, well, we can do this to people too. And he was a dentist, so he suggested a chair, and because you can maneuver around it easier, and so that's how it happened.
That's a fascinating story. It's one of the most fascinating stories we've had on here. I love that. You're coming out strong.
Thanks.
All right, here we go. Actually, before I go further into this, I do want to ask, because you brought it up a couple of times.
Sure.
What exactly is the rural cemetery movement?
Okay, the rural cemetery movement, basically what happened is when you think of early America, you think of the Puritans. They came here to escape religious persecution.
Right.
They weren't a very lively bunch, They were kind of very, the expression puritanical is for a reason.
Yeah.
So they were basically, they just believed that everything was predestined, and that if you lived a good life, you were going to go on to heaven, and in heaven, that would be where your real joy would begin.
Okay.
So they didn't spend a lot of time on pomp and circumstance. So if you were to go to an early cemetery from the United States, they're all flat slate stones, and they have skulls on them or weeping willows. Weeping willows came a little more when it was trying to move towards the rural cemetery movement, but very basic symbols. And basically they didn't have a lot of huge funerals. They would go to the cemetery, bury you, that was it. And it was usually in the churchyard. But then what happened was, as the Industrial Revolution kicked up, all these people suddenly flooded and they moved to the cities. And not only was there an increase in the population of the living, but then people, because they were living on top of each other, huge increase in living of the dead. So like Erie Canal, we had several cholera epidemics that swept through Buffalo, and you couldn't keep up with the amount of bodies that were coming through.
Yeah.
So what are you going to do? Because these churchyards are filling up. So then they started to think about it, and there was this huge fear that if you buried the dead near the living, that the fumes of the dead were going to infect the living. So they thought, oh, we're going to build them outside of the city limits.
Gotcha.
So at the time when Forest Lawn was established, it was outside of the city limits because that ended about North Street. So that's where they started to bury the dead. And it really came about in, there was a couple of things. One was the Grove Street Cemetery, which was a reform cemetery, chartered cemetery. It was the first chartered one in the United States, meaning anybody could be buried there as long as they could afford it. And it was kind of laid out like a city grid, and it kind of reflected New Haven, Connecticut, where it was established. Then, with the Romantic movement and stuff in literature and music and everything in Europe, in England, they started to design, these garden landscapes that were beautiful. So then, Père Lachaise, Napoleon, decided he was going to build one of these rural cemeteries. He came across the same problem. So they moved a cemetery outside of the city limits as well, called Père Lachaise, and it's kind of like the most famous one in the world. And then someone from Massachusetts visited there, and he was a horticulturist, and he got together with his friends, and they decided to bring it here to the United States. Wow. So they established Mount Auburn in Cambridge, Massachusetts.
Wow. Yeah, so going back, okay, so that gives me some background. Going back to Forest Lawn now, so I mean, we were talking about the dentist who helped invent the electric chair. There's a lot of famous people buried there.
There is, yeah.
Who are some of do you think the most noteworthy people buried there?
Oh, sure. Shirley Chisholm is interred there in a mausoleum. In fact, they just established a statue in her honor that was designed by a local artist outside the mausoleum where she's at, and she ran for president in 1972. We have Millard Fillmore, the president. Ely Parker, who was a Native American who worked with Ulysses S. Grant and actually drafted the Articles of Surrender that ended the Civil War for Grant. There's so many people.
I
can't even. The guy who invented the air conditioner, who was from my hometown. So,
Carrier? You're from Syracuse?
Willis Carrier, yeah. Yep, my homeboy.
That's awesome. We're all thankful for him right now.
Exactly. Every time the temperature spikes, I think of Willis. There's endless, really. I in fact, right before I left, I found out that the guy who invented the corn dog is buried in Forest.
That's awesome. and Forest Lawn is massive.
269 acres.
Yeah, it's crazy. How do you, if you're someone in Buffalo and you want to go explore Forest Lawn, like what's the best way to approach it?
Well, you can take one of their tours, or they actually have an app on their website that you can download, and it'll take you to specific. It'll direct you right from one stop to the next. A lot of them have QR codes on their sites too, which basically they have a voiceover of the resident telling you about their lives.
Oh wow.
Other cemeteries are smaller, like Oakwood, where I'm at now. We have a few QR codes, but mostly it's just you take tours.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So you're giving tours for like 20 years, and you're obviously interacting with people, and you're seeing people's reactions to what you're teaching them or what you're telling them. Based on your experience, what do you think are the most common misconceptions about cemeteries?
Well, I know the most common misconception about Forest Lawn is that it's full. It is not. Neither is Oakwood. So
you could be buried in Forest Lawn to this day?
100%, yeah.
Do cemeteries ever get full? Because I feel like they never do.
Not now. In fact, it's kind of, I just saw recently that there's a documentary coming out that's touring like all these festivals and stuff called Death Boom, because they're all worried about now all the baby boomers are going to die, and our funeral homes and cemeteries going to be able to keep up. It's not going to be a problem because, honestly, I think the cremation rate is almost 60% now.
Okay, but but in a cemetery, so I don't care. It could be Forest Lawn anywhere.
Yeah.
I got to imagine there's policies, procedures, like standard way of doing things. Like, how does it work in terms of, someone's buried there, and they have a headstone, is it just there forever? Or like, is there like a 100-year policy where they swap them out or they bury people on top of each other?
Every cemetery is different, but typically, especially up here in the Northeast, once you're there, you're there.
Yeah.
And usually when you are buried, places like Forest Lawn and Oakwood will have a perpetual fund set up where you basically pay a small fee, and it's put into an escrow account to collect interest to kind of upkeep your gravesite.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, so the lawn gets mowed and all of that.
Gotcha. So, okay, so you said you were starting to talk. I kind of interrupted you.
No,
misconception is that it's full, but like, what are like maybe some other things that would always shock people when you were talking?
I didn't really get a lot of people that were shocked about things.
No?
I think they just kind of got into it and didn't really know. Yeah, they didn't really.
What did they get most into? Like, what piqued people's interest the most, you think?
Just the stories. When you tell people like really good stories about someone's life and like full circle moments or alleged meaning behind some of the stones, like some of the scandals behind some of the stones, or like we have a guy, for example, in Oakwood yesterday. I had this group called Atlas Preservation come in, and they did like an all-day workshop on how to clean and re-level stones that have sunk and everything.
Yeah.
And while we were there, the gentleman who was hosting the workshop, his girlfriend was online, and she pulled up information on this cementation, and we have a gentleman and a couple other people that were actually encased naked in cement and buried in the ground.
At Oakmont?
At Oakwood.
At Oakwood, I mean?
Niagara Falls, yeah.
Why would they do that? Do you know?
It was just a thing he wanted to do. He just... So it's
amazing.
A weird story.
I'm going to put that in my will.
It's a bad day for the guy putting him in the grave, right?
Like, I got to do what?
I'm going to need some extra hands
I had
today.
to call the Masons in. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a little nuts.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, so okay, now I mean, like you have amazing stories already. Like, so what are like some of your favorite stories from people buried in Forest Lawn? Like maybe like things people should look out for while they're there.
I think honestly, Forest Lawn's pretty well known, and actually, I don't know how much I should be talking about it because I don't work there anymore.
Sure.
But I definitely, there's highlights there. I mean, they have the one monument that was designed, Blue Sky Mausoleum, that was designed by Frank Lloyd Wright for the Darwood Martin family.
They built that like after his death, right? Yeah, that's awesome.
And actually, Darwin and his family are buried in another section. They're in Section H, but they did stay true to the design, and members of like Wright's family were involved in bringing it here to Forest Lawn and everything. Yeah. Blocher Monument is another one that's really, really popular. If you ever have the chance to see that, highly recommend it. That's got a really cool story about it too. Basically, John Blocher was a local man here who his father died when he was young, so he had to drop out of school, and he became an apprentice to a tailor. And he learned the trade, and then when he got done with school, or when he finished out his apprenticeship, he opened his own shop, married the love of his life, and they had a son together. And the monument is all in tribute to their son, who died at a young age. But there's a great story. I don't want to spoil it because I want people to actually probably go there.
Yeah, fair enough. So I'm not going to ask you to name any names of cemeteries, but I mean, a lot of people get freaked out by cemeteries, especially at night. Like, I know people who like, have conversations like, I'm not buying that house. It's next to the cemetery. I don't want, the dead coming over here in the middle of the night. Like,
we actually capitalize on it at Oakwood.
How do you do that?
Well, we have every year. It was, we had this lawyer who used to work for, the educator, and she actually established a lot of the training materials for the docents and so on. And she came up with this idea, Spirits for the Spirits, as this fundraiser. So every year we have a big event in October. And we have like, now we're going to incorporated vendors last year, but usually you have a food truck, you do tours at night. We set up tables inside the mausoleum, the main mausoleum that was designed by E.B. Green in the back.
Oh, yeah.
So people can eat their food in there, and they can get drinks. And we have a few vendors, and then We have a psychic that does live public readings and also
man.
does personal readings. We're going to actually have more this year. We're going to
wow.
try to do 3 or 4.
This is in October?
October 24th it'll be
Oh, it
this
just
year.
happens to be right around Halloween. Look at that.
Yes,
I'm sure that's
I know.
not on,
Well,
I'm sure
we're
that's
doing it on the
purpose.
anniversary of
Yeah.
Annie Edson Taylor's travel over the falls. And we can't do it in the cemetery this year because we're under construction, but we're going to do it at the NAC.
So I want to come back to Oakwood for sure,
Sure.
and I want to talk about Annie, but without naming any names, it doesn't have to be Oakwood, it doesn't have to be Forest Lawn, any place.
Sure.
'Cause I'm guessing you've traveled to other cemeteries.
100%.
Many,
every time
right?
every time I go to a different city.
Have you ever had an experience where you feel like, hey, I'm not alone here, so to speak?
I've had a few experiences. At one point, and I will revisit it another day, but Edward Austin Kent, a local architect, he's buried in Forest Lawn, Section 7, and I was trying to do research on him because I want to eventually write a book about him because he was very fascinating. And he dated this girl, and she was in the next section over, and I was having a hard time finding her gravesite. So I was like, damn, Ed, you got to help me out here, man, But it had just rained the night before. So I went over to the next section, and the rain made me slip, and I fell. And when I fell, my head was about 6 inches from her tombstone.
Wow.
So to me, it was like Ed saying, here she is.
Thanks, Ed.
Yeah. And I had a similar experience at Oakwood when I was trying to put together a Tales of Tragedy and Treachery tour. There was a gentleman who had actually got electrocuted fixing a power line on Main Street in front of a crowd of people in Niagara Falls. And I was looking for his gravesite, and his stone just practically, I felt like it almost presented itself in front of me. Like he's like, don't forget about me. I want to be on this. So
that's amazing.
That's it. No,
That's awesome.
that's
That's awesome. That's awesome. So talk to me about Oakwood because, it's obviously very old. There's a lot of history there too. Maybe it's a little bit in the shadow of some of the bigger ones, but talk to me about it.
Yeah, it was established in 1852. It was land that was granted to the town by the Porter family because the Porter family were huge in this area, as most people know. Lavinia Porter, she donated the land in, I think, 1849, and then it got established as a cemetery in 1852. So the Porters are buried there. So Peter Porter, who was the Secretary of War for John Quincy Adams, is there. And like I said, then we have a member of the 6888, Isabel Hunt Martin, is there. Yeah.
And what's the 6888?
6888, they were women of African-American women who were sent by the U.S. Army to clean up mail that had gotten backlogged for years during World War II.
Wow.
And it was incredible. They did like 40,000 pieces of mail a week or something.
Whoa.
And they did it for, I think, 2 years.
Wow.
For all this backlog stuff in all kinds of conditions, like rats, everything you can imagine. Jeez. So it's pretty amazing. Yeah.
Then you have Annie who went over the falls.
Yes, and she was really interesting. We kind of consider her like the first lady of Oakwood because she was so interesting. Annie, she grew up in the Finger Lakes region, and her father died in a tree cutting accident, and her mother died shortly after. So she and her younger brother were sent to a private school, and then it ended up she married her roommate's brother, and her roommate married her brother. Then they bought houses next to each other. Then both husbands enlisted in the Civil War. Then they both died before they served. So then Annie went her separate ways, ended up in Wisconsin working as a teacher, but being a widow, she was afraid, how am I going to survive retirement? So she came up with the stunt to go over the falls in a barrel when she heard about the Pan American Exposition.
Wow.
Yeah, so she designed the barrel herself, had it built in Bay City, Wisconsin. She hired a guy to promote herself. So he came here ahead of her and made sure that the press was there when her train arrived. And they put her barrel in a prominent hotel lobby until the stunt. And she told everybody she was 43. She was actually going to be 63.
Whoa.
But she thought no one's going to believe a 63-year-old woman's going to go over the falls, so I better say I'm 43. So she did. And it was kind of sad because she was fearing that she's going to end up in the poorhouse, and that's kind of actually where she ended up. Yeah. Her promoter actually stole her barrel after the stunt.
I was going to say, where's the barrel?
They tried to drum up business. They came to the Pan Am to talk about her feat, and people were more interested in the barrel than they were in her. So he stole the barrel, went to Chicago. She spent all of her proceeds from the stunt getting the barrel back, got the barrel back, hired another promoter, who then hired a young actress to portray her that looked more like 43. Then they stole the barrel, toured the country, and got all of her benefits. Yeah.
You get away with that back then.
Yeah.
No phones, no
Yeah, I
internet, no
know.
TV, nothing.
Yeah, no social media.
He was
you
out
know?
there like impersonating you.
Right.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And so that's sad too. She survives the falls.
She survives the falls. She said she would never recommend it to anybody else.
Yeah, probably. That's probably good advice. And I'm guessing it's just like a wood barrel, like, and she just made it across, didn't splinter apart. She didn't like get knocked out.
No, I mean it got damaged on the top. You know, they actually had to cut her out of it. You know, but she only had like a little bit of scrapes on her forehead and some shoulder pain between her shoulder blades, and that was it.
How much would I have to pay you to get in a barrel and go over the falls?
There's not enough money.
Me either.
Not enough
No
money.
way. No way. Oh my gosh, that's wild. So how do you? So I mean, obviously you get to Oakwood, and there's a lot of history on we'll call them. I think they're called. Don't you call them permanent residents?
I call them permanent residents.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of history on them. But do you then say, you know what, I'm going to dig in more to this person, try to find how does this
100%.
work?
Yeah, it's like a rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds fun. So what's your process?
Well, usually I just go with the information I'm given. Then I have almost a lifelong subscription to newspapers.com. So I use that all the time. You can learn a lot from the burial records too. You know, sometimes it'll give you next of kin. You know, a lot of problems come in when you're researching women because their names change, and if you don't know what their new names are going to be, and even if you do, most of the time they don't have obituaries when they die because it's like the wife of instead of her, you know? Unless she's really prominent, then you would be lucky. But that's usually what I do. I'll go to libraries too, obviously, and research more there too, and see if there's books and stuff.
Are there certain people in Oakwood that you're like you're hitting walls, like you're like, man, I need to get more, I know there's more, but I can't get any more?
Well, it's not, I mean, mostly some women that I do. The problem with Oakwood right now is that we did my friend Shane Stevenson did digitize all the burial permits for the cemetery there, but it was only phase one of the project. They didn't hook it up with the burial locations.
Okay.
So then we have to go into a system and look up where they're actually buried. And a lot of times, because of the cursive back then, it's hard to read.
Yeah.
So a lot of times they'll say they'll spell the name completely wrong, and you have to kind of try and figure out if it's the person you think it is or if it isn't. And then trying to find them because sometimes they don't have stones.
Right.
And that's problematic for me when I'm putting together a tour because I get this great story and then it's like, but I don't have a stone to show them.
If they have no stones, it just means like they're there someplace?
It just means that they're in that section, and more than likely they were relocated from somewhere else.
Gotcha.
Or they were one of the early burials where they didn't have stones yet, I guess.
Have you ever had a situation where for whatever reason a grave was dug up?
No, thank goodness. No.
That would be terrible.
No. Forest Lawn did have some issues in the past, though, like John Albright's, one of his wives' stones got
Like people
stolen.
like thieves came in and took it? That's terrible. That's not even the direction I was going in. But
No.
wow, okay.
No. And then I actually, when we were, I was training my new docents over there was somebody who came in and took a brass sculpture, but one of the kids in my docent class, for whatever reason, had an interest in metals and stuff, so he always was watching these groups, and he actually saw somebody post that they were going to sell it or that they had gotten it or something, and they wanted to get it melted down and get money for it, and so he basically turned them into the cops, which was pretty awesome.
Did you get it back?
Yeah.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah,
what an
yeah.
idiot.
I know. I know, right?
A good thing, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I know. Thank goodness. It was really beautiful.
Can I ask?
Yeah.
Sure.
I walk by the Williamsville Cemetery
Yes.
every morning, and I love going through there because some of those headstones, like almost 1809,
Oh, I know.
1803,
Yeah.
and those seem themselves to tell stories, like with their imagery and stuff like that.
For
Can
sure.
you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. We have, there's, what's great about cemetery stones is, you can tell an entire story on a stone. Like, for example, if you're walking past a headstone and you see roses on it, for example, you'll notice most likely that the vines for the roses don't have thorns on them.
Oh.
Typically, when you see roses on a gravestone, it depicts a woman because it's supposed to mean heavenly perfection, and in heaven there would be no thorns on the rose bush.
Oh, wow.
Things like that. You can also tell, like, if they're a member of a fraternal organization, like you'll see the compass and stuff for the Masons, or the three links, which denotes the Odd Fellows. And even, I mean, you can even go places and see pictures of people will depict their hobbies, like somebody's son who loved skateboarding. They'll put a picture of him skateboarding on this headstone, just so that you can learn little stories about them.
Are people still doing that as much these days?
I don't think so, which is kind of a sad thing because it's such a cool thing. Like, I was putting together a Twilight tour once, and it was really popular. So we'd have two groups going at the same time. So I had to develop a second tour to take place at the same time. And I discovered this wonderful stone. It's an obelisk, and it had on it, in the middle of the obelisk, which is, looks like the Washington Monument, there was a picture of a man kneeling, and right opposite him were two winged angels that looked like children. One was a boy, one was a girl. Above him was an angel flying in the sky carrying a lily, and on either side were winged cherubs. And when I looked at the burial permit, it turns out that the man lost two twins. They were stillborn. So the angel that was flying was carrying the lily, which is a sign of the resurrection. And then the angels that were standing opposite him when he was kneeling were them in their heavenly form.
Wow.
So
I'm going to see, I might be using the wrong terminology.
Sure.
When you, a mausoleum, are those we'll call them like almost like the little, like,
they're like little houses,
right in there. Tell me a little bit about those. I don't think you see those that much anymore.
You don't, probably because of the expense of them.
It's got to be crazy expensive.
I mean, Forest Lawn gets them all the time, but
well,
not all the time, but they do get them. They were, that was part of the rural cemetery movement as well. Because when you think back to the Industrial Revolution, at that time in America, people were always trying to align themselves with rich Europeans. So then they started to bring classical revival architecture to the United States. So their mansions would be designed like, a Greek temple or whatever. And that's kind of how the mausoleums were designed as well, usually. So like Egyptian revival,
right.
Like you'll see ones with, sphinxes on them. And
what kind of things do people usually have in there with them? Or is it just totally random?
It's usually just crypts, honestly.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's nothing. Yeah, it's not usually exciting. I mean, there are some that are more elaborate, and I won't go into them because I'll get in trouble for it. But they're just crypts on the inside. But a lot of times they have like beautiful stained glass windows in there that you can also take a look at for symbolism purposes and see what those show, and it might tell a little bit about the person.
Are there cemeteries anywhere where there's almost like underground mausoleums, where there's things built underground, like hidden, like where people have like maybe their belongings or things that are important to them?
There is rumor that in Forest Lawn there's one where they have their furniture in there. I don't know whether that's true or not. But the Blocher Mausoleum, for example, if you were to look at that monument in Forest Lawn, which is the most popular one, they are actually interred underneath the monument.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So going back to Oakwood, if someone's listening and they say, well, why would I come all the way out to Niagara Falls to see it? What would you say?
Just because you never know what you're going to find. You'll just hear some interesting stories of people that you may or may not have heard of, or you may recognize a familiar name and be like, oh, well, that's where they are, you know?
Yeah.
That's kind of how I started,
And now,
I know that name.
Yeah. And now you obviously been doing this for so long. Now you teach now, correct? Right, at Chautauqua?
Yeah, I'm teaching a special studies class this year. I'm doing two. One is on the rural cemetery movement. Unfortunately, a friend of mine from, I like to call it cemetery camp. That's what we call it.
What is cemetery camp?
Cemetery camp is the Association for Gravestone Studies. Every year they have a conference in June. where people who love cemeteries, a lot of times people work in cemeteries, sometimes people are archaeologists, historians. You all get together and you go to this conference. And 2 days of the conference, they take you on field trips to notable cemeteries near wherever they are. And then they have 2 days where they do present papers and things like that. And a professor that had contacted me while I was at Forest Lawn, Dr. Jeffrey Smith from St. Louis, he wanted to do a workshop at Forest Lawn. I made him give a tour to my docents first because he wrote a book on the rural cemetery movement. But I ran into him at camp last year, and I told him, I'm teaching a class at Chautauqua this year. So then who appears in the course catalog teaching the rural cemetery movement with a better name than mine, dying to get in, but Dr. Jeffrey Smith. So
Damn, Dr. Smith.
Yeah, I know. So right now I don't think I have anybody signed up for that class. And then I'm teaching one called Art, Symbolism, and the Story Behind Cemetery Monuments. Yeah.
So how did you get? For those who don't know, can you talk a little bit about the Chautauqua Institute and how you got involved?
Yeah, Chautauqua Institution was started out as a Lutheran camp on the shores of Lake Chautauqua, and it really was a way and it's kind of morphed into this huge cultural phenomenon where, presidents actually come to visit. I guess Amelia Earhart, my friend Karen told me Amelia Earhart actually landed her plane on the lawn in front of the hotel there, which I never knew. And Edison, a protege of Edison's, put all the lighting in Chautauqua. But it's basically like this huge, beautiful place where they have an amphitheater. They have lectures going on all the time. They have concerts. You can take classes on everything and anything you can imagine. Basically, if you really love to read and if you really love to learn, it's the place to go in the summer.
It's like Camp for the Curious.
Yes, it is, for 9 weeks. Yeah.
What, have you always been a curious person?
Yes, I have. Yeah.
Yeah, I would love to hear about that because we were talking before we started. I'm the same way. Where do you think that comes from? You just always had it?
I think it came from my grandparents, honestly.
Yeah.
I had a grandfather who used to collect antique books and a grandmother who was a preschool teacher. So every year she would get money from my great-grandmother to get us grandchildren Christmas gifts, and she didn't get a lot of money. So every year she bought me a Little House on the Prairie book.
Okay.
And then my grandfather had a McGuffey reader from the era that Laura Ingalls was actually alive. So... and then my grandmother just fed into it. I'd come over on a Sunday and we'd make a doll that they would make in Pioneer Days, or she'd teach me some recipe or something. So it just sort of kind of fed my love of history that way.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm always, it's interesting, right? Because I'm the same way. I love history. I love to learn. If I don't know something, I have to figure it out. Otherwise, it keeps me up at night. I'll tell you, it's a lot easier to do that with AI now. You can learn very quickly.
But some of it's not all accurate.
No, either. I know. You got to be super careful. It's enough to get you going, and then you have to go figure out if it's actually true or not.
Right.
Yeah, you can get in a lot of trouble there.
Yeah.
Talk to me about. So you were talking about. I forget the name. The second class you're teaching. Can you talk about that?
Oh yeah, art, symbolism, and the meaning behind cemeteries. Stones, monuments. I don't remember if I called it monuments or stones. But basically, I'm just going to talk about the common symbols that you see on cemetery stones, what they all mean, where they came from. And then I'm going to share stories from cemeteries I've visited that have really cool stories behind the monuments and all the different nuances within those stones.
And we were talking about that, the rows, and you're talking about the different things on the headstones,
right?
On the monuments. So you talked about cemetery camp. What is? Paint the picture a little bit more. You guys going out happy hour after and talking about cemeteries?
Oh no, it's nerdier than that.
Okay.
It's wonderful. So basically, what they do is every year they host it in a different city, and they host it at a college campus. So everybody has a place to stay, and you all eat at the dining hall just like you did when you were students.
That's awesome. So you're in the dorms.
So you're in the dorms. I mean, you have the option where you can do it virtually, and you also have the option where you can stay off site. But most people stay on site. So the typical day is you get there on a Tuesday, and everybody just gets settled in their room and you find out where the dining hall is. Then Wednesday, you typically pick a boxed lunch, when you sign up for camp. And then they'll take you, usually get huge air conditioned buses, and they'll take you to amazing cemeteries. The first year I went was in Atlanta, Georgia. Second year was York, Pennsylvania. So they'll take you to two or three well-known cemeteries the first day. Then the 2 days, Thursday and Friday, you can listen to papers, and they're all about different aspects that have to do with cemeteries. And then they also have an element where you can learn how to preserve stones as well. So when I went to Atlanta, for example, I went to Oakwood Cemetery. And on Thursday, the preservation crew from Oakland came to campus, and they just kind of gave us like an overall of what they do and what we would be learning if we went for the preservation workshop the next day. So then you coordinate, because not everybody drives. Some people fly in, so you coordinate carpooling to the site the next day, and then you spend the entire day at the cemetery and you learn how to clean the stones, how to reset them, how to glue them back together when they break apart. Or you can stay and just listen to papers all day.
Why is preservation so important?
Because a lot of cemeteries are really falling into disrepair, and it's really sad. A lot of them running out of money because they're not burying people as often, and if they're not connected to like a crematory, they're not bringing any income in a lot of times.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times they're falling into disrepair, and then the municipality has to take them over. And the municipality has limited resources, and they can't really keep them up to snuff, like the way they should be.
Yeah, it's important to preserve history, right? I mean,
Right.
Obviously you feel pretty strongly about that.
I do. In fact, I'm not so good at the resetting or the gluing together of monuments. That's something I really have to learn from a professional and get licensed in before I would even attempt it. But I have been doing a series of cleaning workshops at various cemeteries. I did United German and French for the Mount Calvary group last year. I just did Concordia this year, as well as Oakwood. Just teaching people how to clean a stone. And then what I do is I charge them money for the ticket that goes to Oakwood or whatever cemetery we're going to. And then I charge them the $15, and I can provide them with a cleaning kit so they can clean their loved one's stone. So I'm kind of hoping that people are just going to keep cleaning cemeteries.
Yeah, I was wondering, like, maybe this is what you're describing. Like, I was like, are there programs where volunteers go out and just clean like random, cemeteries?
There are some programs, but I don't know how they're trained, so I don't always recommend them. I mean, I think Oakwood, we're going to probably put together, we're going to offer the people that are buried in Oakwood the like a small fee to clean stones based on the size of the monument as a service.
That's awesome. So there's, like we were talking a little about this earlier, there's a lot of fear that certain people have around cemeteries or death. What do you think is like the one myth you would want to bust about fear of cemeteries or death?
I don't know. It's hard to know because I don't know what people are actually afraid of. I just think a lot of people are just afraid of what they don't understand, and I always have a hard time coming to terms with people who are atheists and what do they think, like if they bury somebody, what do they think? If they still go visit the stone, but yet they don't believe that there's an afterlife. That's kind of a curious thought to me, but I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if
a lot of people, it's either subconscious or consciously even go the step further to understand why they're doing certain things.
Right.
They just do it because they feel like they have to.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Maybe.
I don't know, some people.
Yeah.
Is there a since you've toured so many cemeteries across the country, is there one or two that stand out to you are just the most beautiful? Or
Greenwood in Brooklyn is like the prime in my opinion. I absolutely loved it there. I liked Woodlawn as well. Not as much as Greenwood, but then again, I visited at different times. Greenwood, I visited when all the cherry blossoms were out. It was spectacular. But their programming is outstanding there. Whoever, Jeff Smith and the other, or not Jeff Smith, anyway, whatever his name is, they do a fantastic job out there. Mount Auburn, of course, because they're the first ones. Woodlawn, like I said, Graceland in Chicago. I loved Graceland in Chicago. I also loved, I think Bonaventura in St. Louis was pretty great. Allegheny in Pittsburgh is great. There's a lot of them.
So we both lived in New York City for a long time. We didn't know each other at the time. Do you know the cemetery, Brad, I'm talking about on Long Island Expressway going into the Midtown Tunnel? And there's like, it's in front of a power plant.
Oh, yes.
And there's like thousands, like it's insane. Like how many headstones there are there.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I
don't
know what it's called.
Yeah.
It's bad. It's actually like kind concerning. Like it's I feel bad for the people in there. Yeah, it's terrible. Oh man.
Yeah, you think it was probably all, green pastures at the time.
Yeah, and then there's
now
just
it's all
like, well, we'll put the power
lines
plant
and-
right
yeah.
here, and like the smokestacks, and it's like they're like on top of each other.
Oh,
like just
yeah.
a sea. of them.
Wow.
Like it looks like you can barely walk in between them.
Oh,
Yeah.
and obviously Arlington and is the other one I would say. And I went to Evergreen at Gettysburg, which was pretty fantastic too, recently.
I noted they started putting QR codes
Yes.
What? Really?
on stones
Yes.
so people can actually identify them.
Really?
Yeah, Forest Lawn
We're-
has them on some of them on plaques.
I want like a QR code to a YouTube video of me saying wacky stuff.
I actually,
You guys, I pay somebody to swap out like every like 2 years. It's a new video.
I got enough
I think
clips of you. I
Everything's
got
going
you.
great up here.
I was actually going to do that for the America 250
Yeah.
because we were going to be part of the Western New York Tombstone Trail up at Oakwood, and I was going to have a lot of them have QR codes on them. I was going to put garden stakes in with an American flag
That's
to denote
awesome.
they were part of the tour.
Yeah.
And then I was going to have reenactors from Niagara University portray the residents on video so that when you hit the QR code, it would go to a video.
That's awesome.
But we couldn't really do it because we were under construction, so we can't invite people in the ground.
There's actually reenactments at some cemeteries, right? Where
Oh,
they
yeah.
bring in actors and stuff,
Oh,
like
for
as you
sure.
go through the tours.
Yeah, Forest Lawn does it.
Oh, really?
We do it, for Annie Edson Taylor. We'll have her come by, and be at the cemetery at times. We're going to have her for her 125th birthday celebration this year at the NAC. So,
What's so you obviously have been in this world for a long time. Are there things that you want to accomplish, or things like projects you want to pursue that you haven't had the chance to? Like, where did, because like, obviously with such a curious person, you're trying to like keep learning so much. Like, where do you want to go over the next 5 years with everything?
I don't really know. I mean, I'd really love to work at a cemetery again. This is volunteerism at Oakwood, but I just think incorporating GPS into the cemetery is a brilliant idea, because I know some cemeteries are massive and some of the sections are huge. And even if you have the best map available, it is so hard to find certain grave sites.
Yeah.
I think it would be really beneficial if I want to have some volunteers at Oakwood go through each section and GPS every marker we have, so that eventually you can move forward to connecting it with maybe a QR code and just everybody tell their own story,
That's awesome. So as we near the end, is there anything that you wish people knew about cemeteries, or anything we haven't discussed that you think people would be interested to know or kind of pique interest?
Oh boy, I don't know. I mean, I guess you just never know what you're going to find.
Yeah.
So definitely, don't. I have the habit, I have friends where we get in a car and we'll be driving somewhere and we see a cemetery on the side of the road. We jump out almost all the time, because you just never know what you're going to see, what you're going to find, what you're going to learn. And they're just really interesting, beautiful places that people should spend more time in my opinion.
And don't be scared of cemeteries, right?
Right, exactly. Don't be scared.
Thanks for your time. This was awesome.
You're welcome.
Appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you.